Hello, my friends. Does this ever happen to you? You have this amazing experience and then a crash and burn, like shortly after? Well, this happened to me recently. I had a Thai massage, which is incredible if you get to have them. It's like passive yoga, and the energy in your body just starts to move. On the way home, I was listening to music and I got into such a state of power. It's like I had the whole vortex that Abraham talks about in my heart. And there was all this energy coming out. So, of course, I sent it to people I know who are grieving right now. I sent it to people I know who have medical issues right now. And then I widened it to the whole world, to the Ukraine, to the whole world. And I felt so powerful. I mean, I don't know if it's the I that was powerful, but I was just tapping into this amazing heart energy and sending it all over the place. And then the following morning, I woke up feeling like a loser again. Now, I have to put this into context. I've been doing channeling of some crazy information for a long time, for decades, and yet I could never step out publicly until the internet came along because physically I'm not comfortable with a lot of people. I mean, I don't know whether it's physically or psychically, but it really wasn't something I could do. So, writing, doing videos, that works for me more than being with people, that I can't read everybody and know what's going on. Empaths can relate to this. Okay. So my husband asked me what's wrong, and I said, "Oh, I'm just in loser mode again." So that night I asked my angels, please, please help me. Tell me what's going on with this pattern. Because this pattern of like feeling incredible energy and then crashing has happened over and over in my life. And so the next morning, well, actually, it was early in the morning. They woke me up. I went upstairs and they let me feel inside that part of me that is really self destructive. And we're not going to get into why, that's kind of boring. But they showed me an image of literally myself beating up on myself as if there were two of me. It sounds a little bipolar, doesn't it? And my apologies to those who work with this bipolar, and maybe I'm bipolar, who knows? Um, but that image of me beating up myself. There's that phrase, beating up on yourself, but I actually saw it. And I was about the age in my late 20s, maybe 30, in this imagery of me beating up on myself. And then they showed me that I beat up on myself physically. I used to be a workaholic. Um, I would just work myself to the bone in a very self-destructive way. On the farm, in the gardens, cutting wood, cleaning, cooking, whatever. I mean, I have tremendous stamina, but I was um, I was using it as an outlet for my self-destructiveness. And then there was a time in my 30s when I self-medicated with wine quite a bit. And that was also to mask this self-destructive impulse that I do think we all have to some degree. I think people who are loved and nurtured when they're tiny have it to a lesser extent, but we all wrestle with this to some extent. Anyway, so they showed me this, and I really wanted to stay with the feeling of this. I knew that if they were opening up this for me to see, I wanted to stay with it. So I stayed with it and stayed with it and felt what it felt like and really stayed there in that feeling. I wanted to feel it as much as I could, the way that I feel like a loser, that I beat myself up all the time. And so at some point I asked them, well, how do I clear this pattern? Because it's all our spiritual blueprint or our identity blueprint is within these patterns, and we can change them. We can change our pattern. In fact, I'm getting more and more convinced that that's why we're here, because we can only change the patterns that we carry in our identity from past lives and in between lives in the manifesting level, which for us is physical. So, perhaps we plan to change these. Perhaps this is part of our kind of birth plan, but we're not going to get into that today. Let's get into what they told me to do about this. And so, being a gardener, my first visual about how to work with the self-destructiveness within myself was like with a winter squash. Of course, it's all around Halloween, so everybody knows that pumpkins have seeds in them. But if you've never dressed out a winter squash, you cut it in half and you scrape out the seeds, and then, you bake it. So my first image was like scraping out the seeds in a squash, but the seeds were kind of rotten. I mean, they weren't the healthiest seeds. They weren't the seeds you would save to replant, so to speak, the next season. And then, so I worked with that for a little while, and then they wanted me to feel inside my entire torso that it was aligned with a Tari substance. In other words, this self-destructiveness that really felt a lot intergenerational also to me because of, my dad and mom's, the way they were, that this pattern of self-destructiveness was aligning my entire torso on the inside with this black tarry substance. And so they had me imagine burning this tar. Now, the four elements, we think of them as earth, air, fire, and water, but actually they are earth, air, light, and water. And so, the fire is just an intense expression of light. So I stayed with that image for a while, burning, 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 letting it burn, really feeling it burn, not feeling in a physical sense, but, in my mind's eye, letting this burn. And then I asked, when that seemed complete, I asked, well, what else do I do? And they said, now have a 30-year-old version of yourself hugging a 30-year-old version of yourself. So it was like two images of myself that I needed to hug and hold myself. So that was the imagery they left me with. So every evening and morning, I'm trying to remember to just hug and hold myself. Because we all have a lot of challenges here. There's a lot of suffering. This isn't easy. So I just wanted to leave you with that. And thank you for playing with this idea. I'd be interested in if anybody else has seen this pattern of these great gifts and then getting really depressed after them. When you really connect with the spirit of all that is, and you're really in the groove and you're like in amazing energy, and then you are swamped with the old darkness. And I think what this is like is our life. It's like sun and clouds, sun and clouds, sun and clouds. And it just goes back and forth, and it's fairly constant. So I wanted to thank you again for coming. Until I see you again, please be well and please be blessed. Take care.